Hello and welcome to another beautiful Friday on Speaking for Him. I'm Dan VanZalen and here's your host, Andrew Gomison.
Hello, Dan. It's great to be with you, and I just wanted to let you guys know that we are going to do something that we have never before done on the Speaking for Him podcast, and that is we are going to review a series, a TV series, as opposed to just a movie. And we will continue to review movies from time to time as well, but this is the first time we will have reviewed a series. And the series in question is called The Chosen. It is written, produced, and directed by Dallas Jenkins. And the interesting thing about this series is that it is a $10 million crowdfunding project that brought the first season of 8 episodes together. And I had the opportunity to watch the first 2 episodes. Dan watched the first one and a little bit of the second one. And so we're going to take the time to review these with you. And as with other series that we have, we probably won't be airing these back to back to back and so on and so forth. We will air them as time goes on. But we hope that you enjoy this discussion of the first episode, which is The Chosen. I have called you by my name. And you may have noticed that in the beginning of this podcast, I also didn't say, it's a beautiful Friday or welcome to Friday. I hope you have a great weekend. And the reason is that I wanted to make an announcement here that I've been talking to someone else who posts podcasts, and he has recommended that perhaps I begin to post on another day towards the middle of the week. And I'm thinking that I might do that starting in either early April or early May. But I would like to wait a little while to get some feedback from you, the listener. So is there a particular day that you tend to listen to podcasts? That would be my first question. My second question would be, do you listen to podcasts more at work or at home? So those 2 questions, and I will try to get a poll up on Facebook if I can figure out how those work. I'm pretty sure they're not that complicated, but if you can give that some thought and give us some feedback on that particular issue, we would really appreciate it. So now back to the issue at hand. Dan, can you give us our quote of the day?
Indeed. My original idea in making The Chosen was simply to create a short film about the birth of Christ in a fresh way. As I shared it with friends, ministry leaders, and entertainment professionals, I kept getting the same response. I want more. As a result, we decided to make an entire TV show about the life of Christ through the eyes of those who encountered him. Dallas Jenkins.
Okay, and of course, as I said, Dallas Jenkins is the director of this project and kind of the main person behind it. And I guess his wife has written a devotional having to do with that. So we're going to discuss it a little bit. But before we do, Dan, can you share with us the trailer?
The trailer.
Excuse me. I have something for you. For me.
Throw this down for a catch.
I don't have a quarrel with you, teacher. We've been doing this all night. Nothing. All right.
Fruit here is incredible. Everything that grows here is immaculate. Except for the people. You're such a miserable lot. You worship one God, and yet you're all divided.
Only one language keeps their peace. None speak it.
You are the great Nicodemus.
I serve only God.
Yes, Yes, so do your enemies, rogue preachers in the wilderness, raving about a coming Messiah.
Simon,
You're scared. I've lost everything. Burnt every bridge. If I don't catch a ton of fish or get some help somehow, they'll arrest me. I'm trapped.
No more talking, Simon. Maybe God can get your attention now.
Who are you?
Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. I saw him. It was incredible. You have experienced a miracle. You are healed.
What do you want from me?
Follow me. He performs miracles and seeks no credit. Who did this?
I don't know his name. His time for men to know has not yet come.
We've waited for you for so long, we believe.
you have much bigger things ahead of you, Simon, son of Jonah.
Anything is possible now. Don't you see? Would you at least know him if you saw him again?
I will know him for the rest of my life.
I'm Dallas, director of The Chosen. You know, last year, over 15,000 people from around the world crowdfunded a record-breaking $10 million to create an original series outside the Hollywood system. Now, we created this so the world can experience Jesus in a way that's never been done before. And what you just saw is a glimpse of season 1. Go to thechosen.tv and you'll get a free 48-hour pass to watch episode 1 in advance. This project has been an incredible ride, and we'd love for you to join us.
Okay, so there you have the trailer for The Chosen. And one thing I want to say up front here before we get into the meat of our discussion is one of the unique ways that they are distributing this show is it's basically free on the app for all 8 episodes of season 1. But they do ask that if you are minded to support the project, that you click the pay it forward button on the app and choose how many episodes you want to fund. And then that allows other people to watch the episodes and also allows them to begin to prepare for season 2. The first thing I'm going to mention is it's very interesting how TV has changed over the years. I'm old enough to still remember when you had to run to the TV when your show was on. And you had to watch it on the day, because if you didn't, it would be gone forever, or at least until syndication.
Or unless you happen to record that particular episode.
Yes, and that was complicated too, because you had to get a blank video and had to be ready, and you had to learn how the timer worked on your stupid VCR.
Or just be sitting there, hit record, then run off to do your next chore.
That too. And you could always record while you were watching, but then you always had to remember to pause the record during the commercials if you wanted to eliminate the commercials, and then remember to push record again when it came back, or you'd miss valuable parts of the show. All that to say, TV has changed quite a bit, and so for this, it's more like a Netflix season. There's 8 episodes. When I first heard they were doing a season of a seasonal show about Jesus, I was still kind of thinking in terms of, 13 to 20 episodes, but I understand why it's not that big, because it does take a lot of money and a lot of effort to put these shows on. So let's plunge into this first episode. We meet some foundational characters. We meet Peter, who at that time is Simon, because Jesus hasn't renamed him yet.
Meet Andrew.
We meet Andrew, his brother, and They are struggling in the fishing trade, and I don't think I thought of them in terms of struggling as much as they did on the show. But it certainly makes sense when you think about the fact that when Jesus encounters them, they hadn't caught anything all night, and they were exhausted and frustrated by that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also meet Mary Magdalene. The episode very much centers on her. It starts out showing her as a little girl, and then fast forwards 28 years and talks about her struggle with her demons, or her literal demons.
Mm-hmm.
We often use that phrase that people struggle with their demons, and usually we're using it in a figurative sense, but in this case it was literal. And then
we meet Nicodemus.
And then we also meet Nicodemus, which I find interesting. And for those of you who kind of just want a verse by verse retelling and you don't like a lot of suppositional storytelling, you probably won't like this as much. But I feel very strongly that even though there's a lot of supposition in the episodes, it's extra biblical, but it's not necessarily unbiblical, because so far the things that I've seen really do fit into the biblical narrative. The important thing that we must do when evaluating something like this or when enjoying something like this is to make sure that we don't get it confused with the Bible. Because I remember there was one time I read a biblical fiction book about something, and then we were talking about the character that it was about in church, and I thought, well, didn't this happen to them? And then I was looking for the verse, and I realized that it happened in the biblical novel that I read, and it wasn't recorded in Scripture.
Yep.
So that is one thing that you have to be very careful of when embarking on a journey like this.
Also, another note is that the chosen people are very careful, at least in the first episode, to have a disclaimer that says you should be reading these stories in your Bible if you want the actual foundational story.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Dallas's main goal in putting together these shows is to get people interested in the Bible and discussing it on a deeper level, because they like what they see on the screen, and it does indeed represent real people.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we go through some of this as pertains to the episode? So Dan, you got through the first episode, is that correct?
Yep. Although I mostly listened to it.
Well, listening works. I actually thought about doing that at work earlier today, as a matter of fact, so I could get through them both twice before tonight, but I did not get the chance. I did not take the opportunity to do that. But, so the first episode, what are your general thoughts?
Well, you can tell it's a TV show by the way they start it. However, I was, really, really confused during most of the first episode. Part of it was because I had to start and stop it in the middle of the workday listening to it. Part of it is just that it doesn't seem to make sense until they tie it all together at the very end, and it's an hour-long episode.
So it's kind of like the way a lot of modern novelists work, where they'll have like 3 or 4 storylines, and you're like, I know eventually these are going to work together, but right now, as I'm reading it, they don't really. And so there was a lot of that. That is definitely true.
To be honest, the first episode, I think, is like 5 different character focuses. You've got Mary and Nicodemus and the brothers and Matthew and then some general Roman stuff, like basically little bits about the Roman centurion, like the one who guards Matthew's tax booth.
I think the one thing that I really like about it is we don't get a lot of information about the disciples in the Bible before Jesus met them.
Yeah.
We do know that Peter's reaction when Jesus borrowed his boat was, after Jesus got done speaking and came out of the boat, Peter said, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." So he knew that he was a sinful man. He knew that he had no right to be around this guy that somehow knew everything about him just by looking at him.
Yep. And I do like the way that they try to present that in The Chosen, because they have him in a quote-unquote friendly fist fight, and his brother later mentions that he likes playing knucklebones and, different gambling games. Well, that's all stuff
that was
they
confusing. That was confusing to me even the second time I watched it. I'm like, why are you beating up your brother-in-law and just for the fun of it? And at first I thought he was really mad, and then the second time it seems like it's more for sport.
They were betting on the fight.
But there was blood and not a lot, but there was enough to where it was confusing as to whether there was animosity or not.
And then, of course, they tell their sister that he was evil and he jumped them, and he's like, what is this story you're hearing? And she laughs at him.
Yeah. So it definitely adds humanity to the characters. I really felt, I think one of the most exciting things for me was feeling Mary Magdalene's pain. And
the actress did a great job.
And just realizing, we read that God, or that Jesus cast 7 demons out of her. That's really all we read. A lot of times we make allusions to the fact that she might have been the woman caught in adultery. There's no conclusive scriptural evidence to that. They seem to kind of tiptoe around that in this Chosen episode 1, 2, because they kind of implied that men were taking advantage of her, but it almost seemed more in this than in other things that I'd seen that she was being forced to do it against her will. But either way, it's a bad thing.
Yeah, and the barman's like her only ally.
Which I thought that was kind of strange too, but life doesn't always have this pretty picture.
No.
But that's where the redemption comes in, because when Jesus walks into her place, he finds her where she is, and he pulls her out of the miry pit. He literally does that.
Yeah.
And you can see it unfold on screen, so that was pretty exciting.
And I do enjoy the fact that they snuck in a don't drinking kids thing, where the bartender tells her, this is not going to help you. It's only for forgetting things a little bit for a short time.
That was actually really good.
I know.
Because most TV shows, when they're stressed, they go drink and they never talk about the consequences of that, or that it's a short-term fix.
Yeah. I love the fact that they have a barman who's apparently an Enoch get to the point where he says, Mary, you're my friend. I want to help you, but this is not going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is trying to help his friend. And
so
it's great.
Was there anything in this first episode that you saw as a negative?
Most of it's kind of in the technical realm, and it's stuff that they can't really do much about. But I thought it was kind of negative, kind of funny that Quintus, the administration guy, dresses up as a centurion, and his helmet does not fit. If you watch him talking to Nicodemus the first time you meet Quintus, his helmet's flopping all over the place. And
as an authority figure, that wouldn't be the case.
No, and
it would be precise.
And I don't know for certain, but I was under the impression that most of those cheek guards that you see flopping around on this various centurions were actually tied underneath their chin. So I was like,
because again, they wouldn't move around like that. It would be horrible.
It'd be terrible for your protection if it's just flopping around.
So
but, that's just little stuff. Really.
I think their interpretation of Matthew as a little OCD, and as a matter of fact, I think they said their interpretation is that he had Asperger's syndrome on the autism spectrum, and the actor actually does, as well as and he said something about there being historical basis for that choice. I would have to delve into it more to figure out where he's getting that source material, but it was definitely an interesting interpretation and kind of just showing how the disciples had different personalities. Mm-hmm. They weren't just 12 stagnant men. They all had personalities and flaws and came together to learn from Jesus and to eventually further the church.
And most people tend to also gloss over the fact that Matthew, as a tax collector, was very much not liked. He's thought of as something of a traitor because he was collecting taxes from his people for the Romans.
Well, I think the first time the religious leaders say something about Jesus being with tax collectors and sinners is when he goes to Matthew's house.
Yep.
If you read the scriptures. So not only is he spending time with tax collectors and sinners, but then he made a tax collector one of his disciples. And so that couldn't have gone over well.
No. Although I'll be honest, as a positive thing, I really enjoy this interpretation of Nicodemus. I like the guy.
I do too, because you can really see how he's starting to question things, which is why he would later come to Jesus by night and ask him the questions that he did, because the conversations that he has with his wife are very insightful.
Yeah.
And
this is a smart man.
And yet, all of his training, he's starting to question.
Yeah. And he really does wish to understand, the Torah, the work of God. He wants to understand.
So I think as we wrap up and we talk about the biggest lesson in this episode, I think it's just showing the brokenness and the mess that Jesus came into.
Oh yeah.
Peter's struggling with money. He's struggling in his relationship with his wife. He's struggling in his relationship with his brother. Pretty much every aspect of his life right now is on the struggle bus. And, but it just shows you how Jesus is going to come in and gradually make things right.
Oh yeah.
And then just the transformation of Mary Magdalene and just feeling her pain. The supposition is that her father died of some sort of illness when she was a little girl.
Yep.
And she never dealt with it well. And
most assuredly.
And so then that opened her up to the opportunity for demon possession. And so I really felt like it was a really good kickoff episode. I think as a preacher, I was definitely expecting more scripture within it, but I understand the groundwork that they're setting up, and I definitely would recommend it, especially as a vehicle for discussion. And I hope that everybody out there takes the opportunity to download the free Chosen app from your app store, and then if you like it, support it so that Dallas can continue to make more shows. He said in the explanation video at the beginning of episode 2, he said, I want to make 7 or 8 seasons of 8 episodes apiece. So he's got a lot he wants to do with this series, and if it gets people talking about the Bible and excited about the Bible in a way they weren't before, that is exciting to me, because the Bible is an exciting book, and it's about time people started thinking about it in those terms.
So, rating of this episode.
Well, it's kind of funny. You were talking about some of the technical stuff, and I tend not to notice that right away, but now that you mention it, I'll be looking for it in every episode from here on out. So thanks for that.
Sorry, but not really, because I don't necessarily get engaged right away, especially when you start laying groundwork. So I tend to notice these little things.
No,
Most of them aren't bad.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying that it's interesting how your perspective changes when somebody gives their interpretation, and then all of a sudden something that you wouldn't have noticed becomes prominent. So, but I would say, I'm going to say probably 3.5 out of 5. And that is because, as I said, I probably wouldn't have put quite so much supposition in there. But on the other hand, Mary Magdalene was a very interesting place to start. Yes. And I know they went back to some historical texts. So they didn't just, I'm pretty sure they didn't just, create it out of total thin air either.
No.
So, but again, I would have probably had a little bit more, scriptural basis in the first episode. But I'm also coming at it from a preacher's perspective and not as much of an entertainer's perspective.
And to be fair, the director did get a lot of advice from professional entertainers at how to draw people in.
Oh, absolutely. He did. So I still heartily recommend it, but my ranking is 3.5 fishing nets out of 5.
I'll say 4 fish out of 5, because I did enjoy, the way they were putting things together, because it is engaging once you get about, a third of the way into it. It starts becoming more and more and more engaging. It's not really high on my list because there's some lighting issues that make it hard to watch and you're not in a darkened room, just little bits.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the little personal things, like Mary always going back to that verse in Isaiah about God creating her, as a touchstone to try to keep sane.
And it's really a good thing to remember for us too, because there's another verse in Isaiah that I kept thinking of whenever she would read that, which is, I thought of it. I've thought of it when I'm in sort of a panic at times. It's the verse in Isaiah that says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." And that's really what she was trying to do. And so I really appreciated that about that episode.
Yes.
All right. Well, we will be reviewing future episodes as we go on, but I hope that you enjoy that. I hope, as I said, that you will download The Chosen. And if you see fit that it's quality enough to donate to, please do so. It's good to have quality, family-friendly entertainment. And when it can point us to the truth of the Word of God, that makes it even better. So with that being said, I will just say, have a great weekend and keep serving the best of masters.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Your host has been Andrew Gomison, founder of Speaking for Him. For more information on today's show and to leave us comments and voicemails, visit speakingforhim.blogspot.com. You can find Andrew's ministry at speakingforhim.com. That's speaking, 4, HIM. You can also interact with us at facebook.com/speakingforhim and on Twitter @speakingforhim. And when you look for us on iTunes and Stitcher, let us know what you think of the podcast by leaving a rating and review.